Welcome, good thinkers. Welcome to Good Thinking Live, your little snippet, your little bit of time at the beginning of the week to devote some time to take away some time away from all the time we're told what to think so we can devote a little bit more time to improving how we think. And today we're going to talk about upgrading our thinking using one of my very favorite, or addressing or grappling with one of my very, very, very favorite topics, curiosity. So, in the meantime, if you're new to the show, the people, the good thinkers that are regulars know the drill. Let us know who you are and where you're from, because this is all about participating. That's the great thing about this live stream. We are streaming live from LinkedIn Live, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, most Mondays, and on YouTube Live. So if you're there from YouTube, welcome. Here from LinkedIn, welcome. Let's get started. Oh, yay! We've got one of my favorite good thinkers in the house. Hey, how you doing? All right. Okay. So here is the very first question. Here's the very first question. And definitely share it in the chat, because the more we share, the more it becomes a conversation. All right. What's something that you are curious about? And I'll tell you one of the things that I'm really curious about. I'm really curious about AI, artificial intelligence, and this big debate whether general artificial intelligence or whether singularity, where there's this point at which artificial intelligence surpasses humans and takes over the world or whatever. And there is this big debate in AI between the people who think it's never going to be a problem and people who think it's going to be a problem. So that's kind of one of the things that I am very curious about. So I'm always kind of looking and trying to understand. So what are you very curious about? And then the second question is, what is something that you could be curious about, but you're not? You could be curious, but you're not. So I'm going to say hi to some people as you're thinking. I'm going to say hi to Bartley from DC and Stephen. Okay, Stephen, greetings from the microbrewing and distillery capital of the United States. Woohoo! Okay. Kasim says, who am I? I'm curious about, is that what you're curious about? Who am I? Jessica from Philly. Welcome, Jessica from Philly. What are you curious about versus what is something that you could be curious about, but you're not? All right. So I'll admit something that I could be curious about, but I'm not. And I sometimes have to try to make myself curious. I'm not that curious about reality TV. I mean, there's some shows, I don't want to say like I never watch reality TV, but I'm not really curious about reality TV. But I know that because reality TV has become such a touchstone for our culture, sometimes I have to make myself curious about reality TV. And we've got Amanda from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Woohoo! Oh, place I've never been, would love to go. All right. So what are you, I'll take this banner off so we have more room for your comments. So let us know, share good thinkers. What is something you could be curious about, but you're not? All right. Now, I know that some of you good thinkers already set aside time to think about your thinking, but how much time do you set aside for thinking about your thinking? Like, do you have it scheduled in your calendar? Because today I'm going to summarize what we're going to cover today right at the outset. It's a little different. And then we're going to get into some interesting stuff. But the things that we're going to talk about today in terms of upgrading your thinking is, number one, to actually set aside time to think about your thinking. Now, some people have gotten back to us and said, hey, I use good thinking to think about my thinking. So I know that I have 30 minutes each week to think about my thinking. That's great. But be sure that you have given yourself the luxury of setting aside some amount of time, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, to think about your thinking. So what can that mean? Aha. That's where we get into my favorite topic, curiosity. All right, so here's my question. What does curiosity mean to you? Like, when you think of curiosity, do you think of a little kid? Do you think of a scientist? Do you think you're curious? And the question is also, when you think about what curiosity means to you, is it something that just happens, or is it something that you can make happen? That is the question. For me, when I think about my thinking, I usually try, if I'm kind of stumped and I know that I've set aside this time to think about my thinking, which I have actually put in my calendar each week to think about my thinking. Sometimes I miss it because I'm busy and I don't like it, but I try each week to set aside at least 30 minutes to think about my thinking. And what do I do? What do I do? What can you do to think about your thinking? Who's there? All right. So Abdurrashid says, thinking about our thinking in which aspect, decision, previous experiences, mistakes, achievements. Excellent. So one way is to review maybe the outcomes from your decisions. Okay. Mistakes made, achievements, what role did luck play? Jessica says, curiosity is an area I want to explore and learn more about. Okay, good. That's what we're going to do. A little bit here. How many of you, have any of you, let's see, Stephen says, when I think about curiosity, I think about people I like to hang out with. Yeah, me too. Because what happens when you're with someone who's curious, especially if they're curious to find out about you? All of a sudden, you're like, I like this person. They know, I don't know anything about them, but they know a lot about me. Have you ever been to a party where you're like, wait a minute, they asked me all these questions about myself. I like them. Okay, so we've got some other things. All right, so let's see what we've got. We've got, Awasha says, delving into hidden aspects of something. Maria said, good morning from Las Vegas. Welcome, Maria. Okay, so for me, curiosity involves asking myself, what is something I can be curious about instead of what am I curious about? Because that's what opens my brain up to possibilities. So, for example, if every single day I go to the same websites and the same topics and the same people and the same articles, that's okay because that's what I'm curious about, right? That's what I'm curious about. But if I make just this little slight tweak and say, okay, that's my default, that's what I'm just naturally curious about, what's something I can be curious about? And then, you can look, how do you find that? Maybe you can look for what other people are curious about. When you look around and you see, gosh, it's so weird that people are curious about that. I'm not curious about that at all. What comes to mind? I'll confess mine. All right. So this is good. Rubber chickens. Forgot about the rubber chickens. We've got to get the rubber chickens out. Abdurrashid, to me, curiosity is the ability to ask questions and the opportunity to upgrade your knowledge. Okay. That's like rubber chicken worthy for sure. That is great because upgrading your knowledge also means the willingness to suggest that the knowledge you had before needed to be upgraded, meaning the willingness to know that you might be wrong or limited in your knowledge. So switching from what am I curious about to how can I be curious about topic X reveals that there are more options, and it shows you the many more options available to you. So in decision making, ideally, you want to see all the options. So you're given a job. You can either take this job or take this job. And you look at this as option A or option B. And a lot of times you look at, that's what the options are. But again, and I don't know how many of you have taken any of our decision-making courses on LinkedIn Learning or our Applied Curiosity course on LinkedIn Learning, you want to shove down the option alphabet. So you want to say, okay, option A and option B, maybe this is option G, and to go seeking and be curious about what the other options can be. So curiosity can show you what other options are available, and they can also show you what other options are available to you. So we're going to upgrade our thinking today about talking about curiosity. Now, before we get started, which I've already started, but before we delve deeper, I want to give two ways of thinking about curiosity. One is free range curiosity, and one is applied curiosity. Now, when we think of the childlike sense of wonder, looking under rocks to find bugs, looking up to the stars, asking why, and then we lament how we lose that sense of curiosity as we get older, I'm going to argue a different kind of twist on this, a more optimistic twist. Look at me being an optimist. So I'm going to suggest that free-range curiosity is kind of the pursuit of knowledge for the sake of knowledge. And when you don't, it's just, there's no application, there's no agenda. And by agenda, I don't mean a bad thing, because an agenda could be a decision. So it's that childlike sense of wonder. So it's just looking around and wondering, not wondering for a business idea or how to make a decision or how to solve a problem, but just wondering for one. And that's like basic science, studying the molecular structure of cells to learn more about this molecular structure of cells. Okay. What about applied curiosity? Anyone want to take a stab at the difference between free range and applied? I'm going to say hi. Oh, we've got some good ones. All right. Hello, everyone. It's the ability to think about and regulate one's thoughts. Thank you for your time and effort. Thank you. Thank you. Ability to regulate one's thoughts. Good. We're getting some good ones here. All right. Anyone want to take a stab at applied curiosity? Think about it. So applied curiosity is really like applied science, like in the example of studying the molecular structure of cells to come up with a better vaccine protocol, for example. So one of the things where we lament, we used to be so curious in our youth and we just lose that childlike sense of curiosity. I would argue that it's really a shift. And if we don't dismiss curiosity as something for kids or something that we had when we were little and we don't have time for it, and we just say that maybe the shift from free range to applied curiosity is a more accurate description of how we think about curiosity, then we can embrace curiosity as one of the most powerful predictors of any kind of success, happiness, and more importantly, probably lumped into all things, flourishing. All right, so let's bring another comment in. It seems to me that free range curiosity is to explore with no scope. Absolutely. With no agenda, no application. And applied curiosity is to explore with application. And that's really what we specialize in at Applied Curiosity Lab, is using the tools of applied curiosity and critical thinking specifically for making better decisions. That's what, like when I'm not doing good thinking, that's what our work is. So really using these tools as frameworks, mental models, excuse me, for making better decisions. All right. So how many of you are working on an interesting project? How many of you are working on an interesting project? I'm working on a couple of interesting projects, working on some stuff for LinkedIn, we're working on a whole new online training and coaching program for high stakes decision making. So at Applied Curiosity Lab, we're working on a whole bunch of really new, interesting projects for work. But I'm also working on some interesting projects for home. And I mean, just for nothing, I should say, not for home or work, but just for my own upgrading my thinking. And one of them involves house plants, which seems so weird because, so I went to the place to buy a house plant because I needed a tall plant. We're going to be recording another LinkedIn Learning course here in 2 weeks, and the director wanted a house plant for the corner, so I had to go and buy this house plant. And when we were looking at the house plants, there was this really cool plant. It ended up being too big; it didn't work. But in the soil, there was this bright purple mushroom. This bright purple, and I was like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And then the person helping me says, "Oh, this one comes gift with purchase. This one comes with a mushroom." And then I started thinking, I mean, it was the most beautiful thing. And it just happened to be kind of under the leaves. You could have missed it. And then I was curious as to whether mushrooms and house plants, is that a good thing? Is it going to eat the plant? Does it mean that the soil? So I went on this kind of deep, interesting project to think about the role of fungus and mushrooms in houseplants, and led me to a fascinating movie, which I highly recommend, called Fantastic Fungus. So even though you think, well, that's not really a project, sometimes it's a project just to learn and be curious about something that I wasn't previously curious about. So a project can be as simple as that, to learn and be curious about something you haven't been curious about in the past. And then another project could be like a project for work. The key is not to hunt for big ideas. You don't have to hunt for big ideas, but if you put in time to focus on working on things that you've made yourself curious about, something magic happens. Anyone want to take a stab? What happens when you put in time to focus on something you made yourself curious about? I'm not curious about reality TV, but I have a story of how that ended up being where I was on a reality TV show for a minute. Not that I wanted to make that a big part of my life, whatever, but my interest in learning how to do it, because I decided to pitch this idea for a show, ended up turning into an amazing adventure. Now, I'm not fascinated with reality TV, but I followed my curiosity. And what happens is this curiosity turns into interest. It's weird how it happens. Like, you're not interested in this. Some people are, like Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of people are interested in Dungeons and Dragons. How many of you are interested? How many of you are interested in Dungeons and Dragons? So I was like, why are all these people interested in Dungeons and Dragons? Then I thought, okay, well, I got to find out. So off we go. So we go learn about Dungeons and Dragons. I have a friend who has been doing it for 40 years, and he comes and does this party for us. Fascinating world opens up to me where I learn not just about Dungeons and Dragons, but this whole ecosystem, this whole world of people that are playing these games, these fantasy games. And this has been instrumental in helping at my company us create workshops that are much more immersive, that are much better. How did it come out of Dungeons and Dragons? So your curiosity will turn into interest. So is in this context, what are the most common curiosity killers? Okay, so, and people can weigh in. One of the most common curiosity killers is valuing certainty over inquiry. So I don't even want to know about what people are saying. I don't even want to consider an alternative. I don't want to find any disconfirming evidence to what I believe to be true. I know the truth. I am certain that I'm right. Biggest curiosity killer. How many of you have, I felt this sometimes. Biggest curiosity killer. Some people have been, how many of you were raised in children should be seen but not heard families? Now, you can't blame your family necessarily for that. Maybe they were raised that way too. How many of you have experienced that, or maybe even have created that for your own kids? Like, this is how it's done. Don't ask questions. I don't want to hear from you. I'm the adult. Don't ask why. All right. So we've got, you can expand your center of knowledge and grow creatively. Absolutely. Absolutely. So these are two of the biggest curiosity killers. I think that if I was to sum up curiosity killers and we know where we've seen them. I think we have a movie on that in our Applied Curiosity course, Avoiding Curiosity Killers. But I think if I was to sum it all up in one kind of statement, it would be if you value answers that cannot be questioned over questions that cannot be answered. And by questions that cannot be answered, that just means that these are questions that exist without a definitive answer. It's constantly moving you closer and closer, progressing you closer to the truth. But if you say, this is the answer, and you can't question it, that is a curiosity killer. And it's probably the curiosity killer that's like the meta, the curiosity killer, the grand curiosity killer of them all is that. All right. So to go from nothing to a big idea, whether you're trying to do it just as a thought experiment or a business idea, your curiosity will turn into interest. And once you spend time on things that interest you, your mind will start to open up to big ideas, and the big ideas will start to emerge. So here's my question to you. How many of you, because no one has answered, how many of you have a project that you could work on, maybe something that would take like a month? Could just be, I'm going to learn about some crazy thing, birds or mushrooms or Dungeons and Dragons or reality TV. I'm going to get so curious about that I'm going to create a project of getting curious about something that I'm not curious about. How many of you could do that for a month? Maybe some of you do this regularly. So you make it something that you can finish. So you say, okay, I'm going to, by the end of this month, I'm going to write an article. Maybe I'm not even going to post it. I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to reach out to someone who is an expert in this and have a conversation with. Maybe you have a podcast. I'm going to interview them in a podcast. You don't have to have these things you don't have to have any of these things set up to act as if you do have them set up. So I'll tell you a little secret. Before we started our podcast, Applied Curiosity Lab, and we've done 2 seasons and we're on hiatus now. But before we started that, I would reach out to people because I was curious about what they were doing. So I reached out to one guy who makes beer, and he was a hop, the ingredients, one of the ingredients for beer. I reached out to him and he showed me how the whole process worked, and he invited me to his place. So when I was in New Orleans, I wanted to reach out to this voodoo priest and understand how he uses voodoo and tarot cards and his readings, and he comes from a long line of spirituality. So I wanted to know all about that. And I said, I'm working on a curiosity project. Well, what is that? Well, this is my curiosity project. So if you have no podcast and no blog, so what? You can still create a curiosity project where you can then go and explore. Give yourself, I'm going to do this project before the end of the year. I'm going to finish this project. I'm going to get curious about something I'm not curious about, and I'm going to go and explore. So then you find a question that makes the world interesting, because there are a lot of questions that make the world interesting. People do great things. They look at the world and they say, why is it like this? And ask a compelling question. Like, I think about this all the time. For years and years, people had luggage. They had luggage that they carried around, whatever. Why? And for years before that, the wheel had been invented. What took so long for someone to think, hey, let's put the wheels on luggage? Just looking around and saying, I'm curious about this. What is a problem? People seem to have trouble carrying their luggage. How hard is it? What took so long for someone to put wheels on luggage? So do any of you have any of those things where you look around and you say, I'm curious about this? Put it in the chat. Share. All right. So we've got another good comment. My curiosity project is to know how people make financial decisions. Okay. Brilliant. You're going to get more chickens. All right. So what can you do? Maybe you're in the financial, I don't know. Are you in the financial industry? Are you in finance? You don't need to be, because what you could do is say, I'm working on a curiosity project to understand how people make financial decisions. You could look on LinkedIn. You could send a message to anyone who is making financial decisions at the highest levels. Go high, go crazy. Pick someone who is an influencer in the financial decision-making world. Pick someone who does it. You could call them up. You could send them a message and say, I'm working on a curiosity project. I'd love to interview you. Well, where's this going to go? I have some ideas. It's a curiosity project. Some people will say no, but believe me, you call enough people, you contact enough people. Some people will say yes. They like talking about their work. They like talking about themselves. And there are 2 ways of looking at being a content creator. One is coming up with original content. And the other is reporting on people who have done other. So you can either be a reporter where you're gathering information from other people, or you can be a creator. So there's kind of the 2 ways of looking at this. But you might just want to do it because you want to upgrade your thinking. It's not because you care about the likes of the podcast you just want to upgrade your thinking. So a better name for passion is curiosity. Now, maybe you want to find out what your real job is supposed to be. Maybe that's something. What is my real job supposed to be? Well, you think, well, that's weird. That's weird, Becky. My real job is what I'm doing. But what does that mean? What does it mean? What are the greatest things that you could work on? Doesn't necessarily need to be tied. Your job doesn't need to be tied to what you get paid to do. You don't work every minute of every day, hopefully. I mean, now I know some of us are scrambling. Feels like we're working every minute of every day, but we're not. So could you take an hour to work at what your real job is supposed to be? Now, if you're getting paid for what your real job is supposed to be, awesome. But can you be curious about what it also could be? What are some other options? And what could be some great things that you could work on? And maybe you find other people who are working on those great things and you interview them, or you connect with them or you learn from them. And some of those great things might start with something you're not that curious about. Fungus, Dungeons and Dragons, reality TV. And that could turn into something that you are interested in. So where are the imaginative people? So we've got, what is something I can be curious about? How much time am I spending devoting to my thinking? What are some great things I can be working on? Let me ask you another thing. How many of you are working on hard things? How many of you are choosing to work on things that are hard for you? Challenging yourself. What's hard? What's hard? So writing a book is hard. Reading a book, some books can be hard, but reading a book, not as hard. What are you considering or thinking about or curious about that could be a snarky or pesky problem? Maybe something that you don't fully understand, like gene editing or artificial intelligence or even painting, making those big murals on the wall. How do people do that? Like, how do they do that? I always wonder, like, you look at this big, huge mural and you say, so guess what you could do? You could follow your curiosity. I want to know how people who paint these murals do it. These artists do it. And you can call up anyone. You can reach out to anyone. I say call up. You can reach out to anyone. So look for smart people and hard problems. And I will tell you that smart people working on hard problems sometimes tend to clump together. Do you know any smart people working on hard problems? Anyone? You have any hard problems that you think, hey, you want to share in the chat? Share in the chat. What are you working on? What are you thinking about? What can you work on? See, the best problems sometimes are hard problems. So, and the problems that you work on, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always put it out there. You can work, you could write a novel you can write a novel for writing the novel's sake. Curiosity has to do with what people, with people wondering what makes something do something. So how does this mural, how do they think about this? How do they do this? And then discovering answers related to each other. And the thing is, like, if you did this twice a year, where you pick topics that twice a year, I'm going to do a project on understanding AI, and I'm going to do a project on understanding murals. You will see the interconnectedness of all of these things. And that can be a topic for you to focus on your time that you steal for thinking about your thinking. How many of you were willing to put it in your schedule, to actually put it in your schedule to think about your thinking? Anyone? We've got challenges are the things that bring the most of you and take to the next level. Absolutely, the challenges. You take you to the next level. Perfect. I knew what you meant. Those fast chats, fantastic. So how many of you would commit to setting aside some amount of time, and you can just put the time in 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour. And if you're watching this during the live stream, great. If you're watching this after, let us know. Just put in the chat 30 minutes, 20 minutes, a week, a month, some amount of time to think about your thinking. And how many of you are willing to get curious about something you might not have been curious about before, to make curiosity happen versus let it happen? And that's just a fundamental shift. I'm already curious about so many things. How can I get curious about things that I haven't? Like, how can I make myself more curious? And what you will see is your net curiosity index will rise. There's no question. And you will become so much more interested. And the benefit is you will understand the world better because you'll start to see the interconnectivity. Like, what does fungus have to do with Dungeons and Dragons? Have to do with artificial intelligence? Have to do with painting murals? Probably more than we think. All right. So we've got Roberta, an hour a week on the weekends. Yes. We've got commitment. And we've got Barclay setting aside 30 minutes on Wednesday. Fantastic. Setting aside, how much time can you set aside to think about your thinking? And it can get easier, but all you have to do is figure out what you're going to be curious about. Now, there's a whole bunch of benefit. We'll talk about enough. If any of you want to know about taking this curiosity to the workplace, that's a whole other topic, because creating a culture of curiosity is Not as easy as it seems. It's not as easy as it sounds. And here's my question I'm going to leave you with before we wrap up, which is there a downside to curiosity? Is there a downside? Because you want to disconfirm. Like, you don't want to listen to someone ramble on and then just go, okay, is there a downside to curiosity? If your discomfort with being wrong is extreme, it will kill your curiosity. And if we create this discomfort in our kids and our employees and our friends, it will kill their curiosity too. And we might think that following our curiosity means just whipping out our cell phones and looking up everything. That's following our curiosity. But what if you look up something and it says, oh, never been asked before? Because we can only, with curiosity, you can only look up on your cell phone or on your smart device. You can only look up questions that have been asked and answered before. But what would the world look like if we all cultivated and used more curiosity? It could heal the world. Thanks for good thinking. I want to, if you've stayed till the bitter end, thank you very, very much. Also, I'm going to give you a little bonus, which is we are contemplating having one of our workshops available to individuals that we have only ever offered to corporations in the past. And the date that we are thinking of doing this is December 3rd. It is a critical thinking framework that you can use for making decisions. So if you think that this is something, and we're making a decision as to whether we're going to do this over the next week, if you think that this is something that you would like to do, it's a 90-minute interactive workshop. It's going to be stealing a lot from what giving an opportunity to share with individuals what we've only ever offered to companies before. If you think that this is something that you would like to do, and December 6th is the date right here at the Good Thinking Time, 90 minutes to do this, let me know in the chat, because we're kind of debating this over the course of the next week to see if we're going to do this. Anyway, let us know in the chat. Have a great week. And let me know, like, if you go through and you come back a week later and say, you know what, this is what I decided to be curious about. Hey, I set aside 30 minutes. Fantastic. Because we all need to become much more sharing. We all need to share much more about what we're thinking about and what we're curious about. And we need to value questions that can't be answered over answers that can't be questioned. Have a great week.